Hello, my name is Gregg Dobrow, and this thesis slide presentation is on waterboarding. The thesis statement is, do Guantanamo detainees deserve the right of due process? And how did waterboarding serve in achieving intelligence for the CIA? I chose this topic due to different views of whether captured terrorists and enemy combatants should be allowed constitutional rights according to the Fifth Amendment. Lastly, how did the CIA use waterboarding to achieve intelligence from the captured detainees at Guantanamo Bay? So, some of the key findings for due process for the Guantanamo detainees. So, due process could not be instated since the detainees did not have property holdings or immigration status within the United States. There were some detainees that did request due process. So what the court system did was they commissioned a military tribunal and or commission, and it was set up so traditional courts weren't being used. So that means even if the detainees applied for due process, there was no way that it could be achieved by them. Some key findings, intelligence-wise, gathering via the waterboarding. There was one detainee by the name of Abu Zebediah who resisted the interrogation to a point of waterboarding. So what this meant is if he resisted, then he would be fulfilling most of his obligations in his religion. And then what Zebediah did was he told the CIA everything that they wanted to know. And then he asked for all of his fellow detainees to be waterboarded. That way they'll be fulfilling their requirement, and then they can let the CIA know everything that they knew. Vice President Cheney was involved with Guantanamo Bay. So the CIA went to Vice President Cheney to get confirmation that they could perform some of these tactics, such as waterboarding. The vice president said, you do what you need to do. But the vice president denied any knowledge and or that he had any part in Guantanamo Bay. Waterboarding captured terrorists resulted in the CIA gathering 1/4 intel on various suspects, as well as their whereabouts, and as well as the structure and operations of Al-Qaeda. There were some further research recommendations that I'd like to discuss. There have been other agencies other than the CIA gotten involved with gathering intel. You have numerous agencies within the Department of Homeland Security, such as the Secret Service, such as the U.S. Marshal Service, that would go out and gather intel and then in turn bring that back to the CIA. There was additional landmark court proceedings involving Gitmo detainees in the federal government. On top of waterboarding, there are additional tactics used in gathering intel, such as sleep deprivation. But to my knowledge, waterboarding was the most useful in getting information out of the detainees. So with the research thesis, there are some key takeaways that I was able to determine. The United States made it difficult for detainees to receive due process under the American justice system. That was one. Vice President Dick Cheney unofficially involved in Guantanamo Bay detention intel. And regarding the Biden administration, okay, so 1 year into Joe Biden's administration, there were still 39 detainees still being held at Guantanamo Bay. When President Biden took office, there were a couple ways that he could have gone as far as Guantanamo Bay. He could have stayed with the President Trump's way of handling Guantanamo Bay, just leaving it open. He could close it entirely. So those were the two options. And to date, Guantanamo is still open. I went ahead and I researched back to January 2023, and there are still some detainees at Guantanamo, but not the amount that were there when it originally opened. Some references that I've used to finding my information. One was Guantanamo Policy is the correct one from CNN. Bradley Chilton's The Limits of Preventative Detention. The Congressional Research Service is a great place to find information if anyone's interested in Guantanamo Bay and the tactics that they used. And lastly, Jeremy Diamond, The Top Takeaways from the CIA Torture Report. Now, there were plenty more references that I have used, and I accidentally sent my thesis to the box that was going to take my presentation. So if any of you would care to read up on the thesis, take a look, and then give me your comments, that would be great as well. Hope you all have a pleasant evening. Take care.